It is a great pleasure to welcome Melanie St. Pierre on this program. She is the lead vocalist of the band Casper's Calls. How are you today,
Hello.
Melanie? Thank you for joining the
Yeah,
show.
thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I should like to begin by obviously congratulating you on becoming a mother.
Thank you.
So, yeah, tell me about that. What is something about motherhood that nobody has told you, and then you had to learn by yourself?
That's a really good question, actually. I get a lot, well, I guess moms in general get a lot of sort of unsolicited advice when they are going through the process of having a child, whether it's from family, friends, or from whoever, strangers on the street, even. Um, and so, yeah, I think that the one thing that I will say that I've learned is that basically just listen to your baby. Like everyone's going to tell you a whole bunch of different things, but it's going to be whatever they think was right for their journey or for their child or whatever. And honestly, every baby is different. So, like, the things that some people have told me did not apply at all to our child. So, literally, it's just like any advice you get, just like cool, but ultimately you're going to be the driver. You're going to be the one that decides what's right, what's best, and your baby is also going to be telling you what's best. So, listen to the baby.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, what would be an example of the unsolicited advice that you had?
Oh my gosh, let's see. What is something? Oh, just like you'll never sleep again, or like, oh, if this happens, it's because of this, like, and that's not like if your baby is crying and wants something, it's, you're they're gonna you're gonna figure out what it is pretty quickly. It's not gonna be because of, I don't know, some crazy reason. Like something maybe someone's told me is like, oh, like your baby will experience colic. It's like, okay, and they'll scream and they'll cry and blah blah blah, and I'm like, your baby's actually just hungry. So you feed your baby's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like so many people have had different experiences, and they've been told uh, things by their care of why their baby's reacting to something, or I don't know. And so it's just like, yeah, I don't know. It's not going to be the same thing for everybody. So
Yeah, I know. So how long have you been a mother, or how old is the baby at this point?
yeah, so actually Molly is 6 weeks. She'll be 6 weeks on Monday, which is pretty crazy. So her whole like general being is changing, and she's hungrier, and she's like growing, and she's going through like some growth spurts and stuff like that right now. So we're just kind of like seeing how it goes, and going with her. And um she's basically kind of leading the way, especially with feeding right now. She just wants to eat all the time. So like that, which is really interesting. And I don't know, it's cool. It's neat to see like the transition of like, she was like this like complete potato, like, a month ago, and now she's like kind of like more fleshed out, and she like wants things, and she's more awake, and it's just like, it's pretty wild. It's just a journey.
Mhm. Yeah, tell me about how you came to the name Molly as her name.
Yeah, so actually, my husband and I, Neil, we we've been together for about like 12 years this year. And so at some point, like maybe 5 years ago or more, like we started talking about like wanting kids and stuff like that. And we just both really liked that name. Like I always really liked it for whatever reason. And Neil liked the name. I think it was Madison. And then I was like, oh, I was like, I really like M names like Molly. And he's like, oh, I like that name too. And then like, I don't know, we just like always sat on that name. And then it was just kind of like this unspoken thing that if we ever had a girl, her name would be Molly. So, yeah.
I see. Do you happen to know James Joyce and the novel Ulysses?
I'm not sure. It sounds familiar.
Well, James Joyce is the legendary modernist Irish writer, and Ulysses is his most
Oh,
well-known
okay, okay,
work.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Right.
Um,
Yes. Okay.
so we're recording this on the 23rd of June. So last Friday, the 16th, was called Bloomsday because the novel Ulysses took place in a single day, and one of the characters is named Leopold Bloom, and the day
Oh,
being
cool.
16th of June, and therefore is called Bloomsday. And one of the characters in that one is Leopold Bloom's wife, Molly. So
Oh,
uh,
cool. That's
her
awesome.
name
I love
reminds me
that.
of that one.
Oh, nice. That's great. I love hearing like, yeah, what people's kind of takeaway of it is. That's cool.
Mhm. Yeah. So are you a big reader yourself?
I used to read a lot when I was in high school. I haven't read a lot, obviously, right now. I haven't read, I haven't read a novel in a bit. The last one that I read was probably like, um, it was more like a more scientific book. I listen to a lot of this podcast called Radio Lab,
Mhm.
and sometimes they recommend books, so I like check them out and stuff like that. So the last one I read was like this big scientific effort that like I like half understood, but like found really really interesting. Um, but yeah, in high school I used to read a lot more. I would read a lot of like the classics, like um, I don't know, like Kafka and stuff like that. Like again, like I'm a teenager, like I'm taking in whatever I can from it, or like Dostoevsky or whatever. And so it's like, you go through this like period when you're in high school where you're like, I'm an intellectual, and you just like read all kinds of crazy books that you're probably not even mentally ready for. But yeah, no, I actually really really liked reading when I was in high school, and I still do enjoy reading. I just haven't had time for it. But yeah, have you read anything recently that you really like and want to recommend?
Well, James Joyce's Ulysses comes to mind.
Yeah, okay, there we go. For Molly.
Yeah, of course. Jane Austen's is Emma too, if she liked it and
Oh,
you liked
nice,
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
I would
Jane
say
Austen.
anything by Jane Austen would be
Yeah,
good.
for sure.
So, I hope I can tackle your family life bit in that. Does it does being a mom yourself makes you appreciate your own mom in a different way?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, actually, like I think about that a lot. Like when I'm like feeding her or nursing or like doing anything like that, I'm just like, well, like my this is how kind of like, I was brought into the world sort of thing. And I think about like that kind of just like on a whole level of, you know, everyone is kind of, they have their own journey with like nursing or the alternative or anything like that. But it's just it's neat that we're all kind of like at one point so dependent on someone, like we are an extension of someone's life, and we depend on them and for our own sake in our own life. So I find that really really interesting, and it makes me appreciate like the hard work that my mom did for me and for my sister. And yeah, like I just hope that I can be like, a really good mom too. And it's a whole thing. It gets you really emotional when you think about it. Like you're just like, I just want to be the best mom I ever could be, right? And like that's gonna look like so many different things for so many different people, but I just hope that for whatever it looks like for me, like I can live up to it,
Mhm.
and then not, and like not be so hard on myself about it too, because that is another thing. So yeah, it's a really it's a really dense thing. Like it's a lot to take in.
I see. Yeah. So, I'm guessing you grew up in Ontario, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's it like growing up there?
Yeah. So Ontario is it's extremely beautiful. It has a lot of like wonderful like forestry and stuff like that. Especially I grew up in Northern Ontario.
Mhm.
So I lived in Toronto for the last 10 years, but then I moved back to it's called Sudbury, Ontario, which is where my hometown is. My parents and Neil's, my husband's parents, also live. It's where we also met. And so it's really beautiful with a lot of nature trails and a lot of forestry and stuff like that. And I have like a cottage that is in Massey, Ontario, which is what a lot of my last record, Knows No Kindness, the one that we put out in 2021, was about. And so, yeah, it's neat. It's got a lot of like cool paths to go check out and like nature and cool plants and things like that. Like I love all that stuff. Like I'm a big plant freak, and I like, going to look at birds and listen to their calls and things like that. So for me, it just makes sense for me to live here. Like Toronto was great, don't get me wrong, but I just like a city life is like good when you're in your 20s, but in my 30s now, like I feel like this is just more like the stream I want to be in. So yeah, it works for me.
Yeah, I understand. For 4 years, I studied at Trent University, which is located in
Oh,
Peterborough, Ontario.
yeah, for
So
sure.
I think it's pretty close to where you grew up,
Yeah.
Sudbury, right?
Absolutely. And I've got friends from Peterborough and one of them actually is going to Trent next year. So,
Really?
um, yeah, yeah, for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah, glad to hear it. Yeah, so I share your views on Toronto too, in that I think I enjoyed myself the first time I went there, not so the
Yeah,
second, because yeah, it could be very overwhelming.
a lot.
I've
Yeah,
actually lived in cities most of my life. I grew up in Hanoi, Vietnam, which is the
oh,
capital
nice.
and one of the bigger cities there. And yeah, at some point in your life, maybe in my 16, 17 years, I find that yeah, I'm not gonna live in cities forever.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's how it kind of feels. Like you're just like, well, for me anyway, like this is kind of like how I felt. Like I was living there and it was fine. Like we were doing music, we were like touring, we were playing lots of shows, we were like making our records, so we had access to all the studios that we needed and things like that, which was cool. And then the pandemic happened and I had a crisis. Like I was like, oh, I have put my whole entire identity into just being this musician living in this tiny apartment in Toronto. And when that is out of the equation and I can't do that anymore, I have literally nothing. Like I'm left with nothing. So it freaked me out. Like it totally changed my whole way of thinking and my husband as well. And so when that happened, we were like, okay, like we have to move home and start developing the other side of our life. Like we can still be musicians, we can still do all this stuff, but we also need to like, like we want to have kids, like we want to do all this stuff. And we were like realizing that we were turning 30 in the pandemic. And it was just like this whole like weird, eye-opening, strange thing that happened. That I'm told that actually happens to a lot of people when they turn 30. Like every time I talk about it, they're like, oh yeah, that happened to me. And I'm like, oh crap. Okay, well, I went through it. So anyway, so yeah, like we moved home, we bought a house, we like got married, we had our first child. Like, so it's like I feel like I have stuff now. Like I feel like more regulated. And also we're working on a whole new record and we're demoing that and like we have an idea of like how we're going to record it. There's an amazing studio here that we're going to use called Deadpan Studios. Like it's just like there's so much that we didn't realize that we could just do from here too. And like if we have to access Toronto, well it's just down the way. Like it's not far. Like so yeah, it's interesting how you just feel like you have to be in a place cramped up to do something when really you're just depressed and you don't have to do that. You can do it any way you want. It can look like anything you want it to look like. So
Oh yeah.
it's weird.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got to listen to the album Knows No Kindness a few days ago. I
Awesome.
enjoyed it a lot. It was beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, that record was really, really meaningful to like in particular myself. Like it was again like it was about growing up in these small towns and some like events that had happened to me and I was just again like I was living in Toronto. I was extremely homesick. Like so it led a lot of the like the you know what I wanted to say, like my story, things like that, and what was just kind of coming out naturally when I was writing it. And like beforehand, the band was always like me and Neil singing together. Like he'd have songs, I'd have songs, blah blah blah. And like it was still kind of like that, but then Neil was like, I can't really put my songs on this record because like it's all about like your life story and things like that. And he's like, let's just kind of like work on this. And now our new record, the one that we're working on right now, is like Neil's back. Like we're both singing again. It's a lot like kind of our first record, but it kind of still has like small folk elements from the second one. Like it's kind of a nice like merger of the two, which I feel is really comfy for us. Like we really like this new direction. Well, it's not even a new direction. It's just like a hybrid direction, but it feels really good and exactly like what we want to be doing. So
Mhm. Yeah. So tell us more about the new record. Do you know when
yeah.
it'll be released?
So we don't know all the tentatives yet about that, but like we're thinking probably in the next year. Like we still have to like go in and record it all, which like we'll probably be doing early next year.
Mhm.
So that's something that we're really excited about. We're just kind of like getting all of the back end done, like the demoing of it all. Because we're doing long distance, right? Like we're living in Sudbury
Oh,
now and one of our members lives in Mississauga,
mhm.
so kind of sending things back and forth. We've never ever written like that. It's always been like we write in jams, so it's a whole new writing experience for us as well, which is kind of neat. So yeah, we're just like taking that in and then yeah, hopefully hop into the studio next year early, and then maybe at the end of the year of next year or early 2025, we'll see. So yeah, we're really excited about what we're working on and yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I look forward to inviting you on this show again to talk about it, the record.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. Yeah, this is awesome.
So you guys recently released a new single. It's titled "Brightest Yellow."
Yeah,
So tell me about the recording and writing of that one.
sure. It was really cool. So, Neil and I have always loved that song. The original song "Bright as Yellow" is by the Innocence Mission,
Um,
which is a band that just had like this really like underrated kind of like um I don't know, like whole trajectory. The same time as like the Sundays and stuff like that, like when they were really big, like all that like kind of twee kind of um stuff. Anyway, we love that song. We love that band. I love their like their B-sides and their like deep cuts, deep tracks and stuff like that, which is like that one song Bright as Yellow. That song was on a soundtrack this a really big 90s like movie what's it called? The one about the record store. The name of
Tower
it's
Records, maybe? Is it
what's
Tower
that?
Records? Is it Tower Records?
No, no, not
Um,
that one. God, why is it? Oh, Empire Records. Oh my God,
yeah,
Jesus.
yeah, right.
Anyway,
That one.
yeah, yeah, which is like a great movie. But that's not why we like it. Like that, it's like I heard that song. God, I don't even know when. Like started listening to this band when I was like maybe 20, 21 or something like that. And I was just like, God, this is a good freaking song. And then years later, I remember listening to that song again. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna look at their like back catalog. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, this band's awesome. Anyway, the song's great. Neil and I love it. We really wanted to cover it. And the band was like, yes, let's do it. So we did. And yeah, it was really, really fun putting it together. Um, yeah, it was cool. We recorded with our friend Aaron Goldstein at Gold Standard Recordings in Toronto, and yeah, it just turned out really fun.
Mhm. Awesome. So I got to know of your work through listening to an episode of the podcast that you did with Peggy Hogan, Molly.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your
Yeah, we
label
love
boss
Peggy.
apparently.
Yeah.
She's become a good friend of the show. So how did you come to know her?
Oh, Peggy. Yeah. So, well, we signed to Next Door Records in 2021 when we were putting out a record, and Peggy's also on Next Door, and so we kind of met through that channel. She took over being when we first signed, I don't think that there was a label manager yet, or I think that they were maybe like getting someone in, or I don't really know what was going on. But Peggy took that on about a month after we started. And yeah, we got to know her, and she's just like so awesome and great, and her music is amazing. And um, yeah, she's been like a really good little, like, yeah, like a little mom to us. Like, she's like, she'll have like little, like we would have like little meetings, and she'd tell us about like, I don't know, like what to do with like social media and things like that, like because she's so good at it. And like, and yeah, I learned a lot from her, like a lot. And it was really great to just, it's just really great to know her. Like she's a super cool person. She makes great music, and she's like super, super knowledgeable about like how things work. And so I was really grateful to kind of like pick her brain about that, and also just like be a peer um, with her, like, supporting us. And it's just, yeah, really cool kind of little connection.
I see. Uh, what is some of the example of what Peggy told you that you like, remember?
Yeah, totally. So I remember specifically we had this little social media chat. Like she probably has to do this with all the bands, just like, hey, like, here's some housekeeping with your social media, like, and she's just like kind of like broke it down for us how all of it works, like what we can do, how we can post, like, and I just thought that was really like really helpful because a lot of bands don't know this at all. And like in my job that I do, but I'm on mat leave right now. I'm actually like the music officer for Northern Ontario now. Like I work at this place called Cultural Industries Ontario North. And so what I do is I actually help bands put together releases and stuff like that, and like put on music programming, showcases at festivals, things like that. And so I learned a lot from Peggy just in that, like in those little meetings and stuff like that, that I was actually able to bring to my job now and like tell them about it. So that was a huge takeaway. So thank you, Peggy. And yeah.
I see. Well, I think when this episode comes out, I'll send it to her and I'll let
Yes.
her know that you said hi, and of course I'll
Oh,
let you know that
absolutely.
she said hi. Yeah, which brings me to the topic of how, musicians, when they become like when they get their music out there, they may have to learn how to like promote themselves
Yeah,
or
exactly.
to learn the business side of music, like when they got popular, which is not something that they, grew up thinking that they had to learn. So I wonder,
Yeah.
how did you manage to pick up those aspects?
That's an amazing question. So every band, and like actually Neil and I were just talking about this the other day, like bands don't just like know how to be business people. Like they're musicians first. Like they're like, I know my instrument, I know my how to sing, I know this and that, or how to record or whatever. They're not like, I know how to make money off of this. Like no one knows really how to do that. And even if you do, are you? Like it's really tough. So um especially with my job, like when I was living in Toronto, I learned a lot, right? I worked with a lot of different labels. Like I worked with Nextdoor, I worked with another record label called Buzz Records. So we learned a lot putting out records, doing all that stuff. So you learn a lot about the business side through that. Like we had publicists that we worked with, so we learned how they did it. Like they would send us their drafts, like they would show us like they give us a play by play of what they're doing for us basically. And then we work with like a booking agent. We work with like we would book our own shows starting out. So you learn how to book a tour. So these are all really important things when you're a musician, especially a DIY one, like a do it yourself starting out. Like you don't know how to do all this stuff, you have to learn it somehow. So in my job now, that's what I help people do. I help them learn about how to do it, which is kind of cool. So a band will come to me and they'll be like, "Hey Mal, like I want to go on a tour," or "Hey Mal, I want to put up this album, but I don't want to just like, put the whole thing out and that's over. Like that's the whole campaign. It just comes out on one day." And so yeah, and I never recommend that. Like there should be like a good lead up to it, like a 3 month lead up to putting out an album with appropriate singles, all that stuff. And so I help bands do that. And so I think learning the business side is very important because it really stands you apart. Like you'll just, if you just put out something like that, or if if you just put up music, you don't ever know how to, you don't learn how to tour, like you're never really going to get your music out there. It's just kind of going to sit in your friend, in your friend group, or it's just going to sit on your Facebook. So learning how to do it the appropriate way is very important if you want to do it the right way. If those are your goals and you want to like expand and you want to grow as a musician, learning the business side is the most important thing you can do. We don't think about it.
Mhm. I hear you.
Yeah.
So do you remember a record or an album that when you listen to it, it makes you think, wow, I want to be a musician?
Kid A Radiohead.
Oh, oh wow.
Yes. First time I ever heard that record, I lost my mind. Like I think I actually something happened to me. Like I don't know what, but first time I ever heard that record, I was like, this is the most cool, interesting piece of music I've ever heard in my entire life. And what can I do to do this? Obviously, I'll never be Tom York, but whatever. I loved it so much, and I was like what 15 years old, something like that, and it just changed me, and I really really loved just wanted to figure out how to do music. So I started playing acoustic guitar and stuff like that. And obviously it was like crap. But you learn how, the more you do, the more you get better. Practice makes perfect. Got to do it a lot. And so, oh God, like I remember when we first started our band in 2015, I didn't even hardly even know how to play good. Like I was just like, does this good? Is this a cool sounding thing? Like you don't know what you're doing, but the more you do it and the more you just try, the more you're gonna actually, surprise yourself and maybe make something cool. So like big, shout out to just trying. It's underrated. Just do
Okay.
it. If you want to do it, just try.
Mhm. Yeah, Kid A by Radiohead is a wonderful album.
Love it.
I love that song. Was it How to Disappear Completely? That was in
Oh
that
my
one,
God,
right?
that song gives me the creeps in the best way. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I've been a great fan of Radiohead. They
Me too.
always know how to experiment with new sound and make them sound good.
Yeah. And even if you don't make that type, like no one's gonna make the type of music Radiohead makes because like what is even it? I don't even know. But like just it, there's so much to take away from it. Like the melodies are incredible. Okay. Like just playing around with like synthesizers or like like even just like he can just write a song with just basic chords and it is amazing
Mhm.
somehow. And I think it's all in the melody and all in the way that all the members just come together, and like I actually have no idea. Like Radiohead is like one of those weird, like sort of like, is it real? I don't know. But it's fascinating to me, and it always has been since I was a kid. And it's probably my biggest influence, like, of my life. So
I see. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there are 5 members of that band, and they've stuck together for like 30 years, right? And each one of them is a musical genius in of themselves.
it's crazy. And all
Mhm.
of them can do different. They can go off and do other things, and they're all incredible, which is rare because like you get like a band, and maybe maybe there's 4 members, and each 4 member does a side project, and it's never going to be as good as the original thing. But I find that they'll go and do something, and it's interesting. Like it still feels like Radiohead, and it still feels good. Like I don't know, it's really cool. I'm just gonna plug in my laptop because it is gonna die. So
I
I'm
see.
gonna go on
Yeah,
a search.
it's a common problem.
Yes. So I'm just gonna take you on a little journey to find my thing. One
House
second.
tour. House
I
tour.
can show you my husband who's at work right now. Neil, do you know where the charger is for the laptop? Okay. Where did I put this? Oh, I know where I put it. I put it in a bin. One second. Sorry, what, Neil? That's weird. Okay, well, whatever. Anyway, I don't know where it is, but it's fine. It'll be cool.
Okay. Well, I think where we left off. Oh, right. I'm a great fan of Johnny Greenwood's musical scores for movies.
Oh yeah, for sure. He did like what, Body Song? That was a weird movie.
No,
Did you ever watch that?
no, tell me about it.
Um, it's basically about. Okay, so I don't even. I watched it with an ex-boyfriend when I was maybe 17. Because I was like, oh, he did this score, and it sounds like a really conceptually cool movie, and it is. It is now because I'm a mom, but it's basically about like life. Like it'll show scenes of like a baby being birthed. Like it'll show scenes of like it's basically of like you going through the trajectory of like growing up and like aging and stuff like that. And it's really really weird and wacky. But it's got a really nice soundtrack too. So yeah, again, like if it's if it's dipped in Radiohead, I'll check it out. So we did. We had to like download it from some weird website because like you can't find it anywhere, but you might now. I don't know, but yeah,
Mhm.
go try to find it. It's really interesting.
Right. It's called what? Body Song?
Body Song, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't thought about that in a long time. Interesting.
Right. And yeah, I've his scores with the Paul Thomas Anderson movies are always great. I think they started working since what There Will Be Blood, and then yeah, all
Yeah.
the soundtracks that they did were brilliant.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like even the scores sound like they are really good, albums. Um, like Tom York did the one for what was it, Suspiria? And it's like amazing.
Mhm. Yeah, I should check out that movie too. I know the first movie, and the soundtrack was done by this band Goblin.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
and
Yeah, like, and then they did the Smile. That
mhm,
was what was that, last year or something like that? That
yeah,
was a really cool album. So, yeah, I just really like them.
yeah, I'll get to that too. Yeah, do you happen to know where the how the band Radiohead got their name?
No, actually, I never looked into that.
Yeah, it's from a song by the band Talking Heads, and it's not like a
And
single or anything. I think it's from their album True Stories, and
that's
the song is
awesome.
titled Radiohead, but the radio and head has a space in it. But so that's how they got their name from.
That's sweet. I love that.
Yeah,
I love
so
Radiohead. I also
yeah,
love Talking Heads, so that's cool.
mhm. Yeah, Talking
That makes
Heads
me
is a
feel
wonderful band. David Byrne, genius musician.
good.
Mhm. Yeah, what I do appreciate about Byrne too is that he never really confirms it, but he's on the spectrum.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Feel like I knew that. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and someone who is too. I find that it's very much appreciative in that, yeah, these people like Byrne can, think of something wildly different and just go with it.
Yeah, yeah. Just kind of like, vibing off of people and like making something really cool. Like I remember hearing about like the writing process for Talking Heads was really interesting. Like it was very collaborative, but it was very like David Byrne like centric. Like he would
Mhm.
kind of like take things and and take them. So yeah, I don't really remember too much about what I read about that, but yeah, the collaborations were very interesting in that
Mhm.
way. Uh,
Yeah. So tell me about how you came up with the name Casper Skulls.
yeah, so actually, are you familiar with a like punk band? Are you familiar with Richard Hell?
No, tell me.
Okay, well, he was this like I don't know, like big punk, I guess back in the day. And yeah, he's got like some really cool music and stuff like that. And he was good friends with Tom Verlaine from television and stuff.
Mhm.
So Richard Hell put out a book. God, it was a while ago. Neil and I read it. It must have been before 2015 because that's when the band started. So we must have read it in like the summer of 2014 or something like that. And we really liked the book, and we really liked the certain line in it. It was a poem that Tom Verlaine had written, and he had signed the poem as Caspar Skull,
Oh,
as like a nom de plume or something like that. And then Richard Hell also had a nom de plume as well, but I don't remember what he named his. But I remember Tom Verlaine's, and it was that. And so Neil and I were like, "Damn, that's cool." We were like, if we ever had a band, like Casper Skulls would be such a cool band name. And we are like, ha, ha, ha. And then a year later, we started a band. So we were like, oh, unearth that band name. So we did. Yeah, and we were so glad we did because it stuck. And it's very Googleable. Uh, we will pop up immediately, which is nice. So yeah,
mhm.
grateful.
Yeah. So tell me more about how the band came to be formed.
So yeah, it's a really interesting story. So Neil and I, we were writing songs that summer of 2014. Like not really, we were just kind of like playing around writing songs, and we read that book obviously together. And then a year later, Neil moved with me to Oakville, which is where I went to school. I went to Sheridan College, and so I was studying art there, and Neil moved on my third year, and he always was in bands living in Sudbury. So he was like, I really want to start a band. So I was like, okay, well, we were writing some random stuff in the summertime. So we are like, well, let's see if we can put together a band. Like I had never been in a band before. I always wanted to, but I just didn't feel like I could do it, the whole thing as being a woman and things like that. You just don't think that you can do these things when you're young and stuff like that, which is awful because you can. Again, go back to what I was saying again about trying the whole thing. Anyway, so yeah, so I was like, okay, well, let's start a band then. So Neil's like, okay, cool. We need members. And I was like, yeah. He's like, I don't really know anybody who does music in Oakville. Like, I go to art school. Like, I know a lot of artists. And so we were like, okay, well, let's put a call out for someone to maybe play drums. So Neil put out a call on Kijiji because that's what you did back in the day. And Chris, our friend Chris, reached out and was like, yeah, like I'm interested in doing this. So we met up with him for the first time. We didn't know him at all. We had a jam with him and it went awesome. So he was like, oh, I'll play drums. So we have a drummer now. And then he was like, oh, I have a friend named Fraser who could maybe play bass. So Fraser came to the jam and we immediately fell in love with him. We all got along so well, and that was it. And we started the band in 2015, and then we played our first show in February of 2016. No, sorry. We started the band 2014 at the end of 2014, and then played our first show in 2015 in February. That's what it was. Yeah, timeline escaping me. And we played it in Sudbury. Actually, we drove home to play our first show, and then our second show was in Oakville, and then our third show was in Toronto.
Huh?
Weird. Feels like a lifetime ago, but super nostalgic and super grateful for all of it.
Mhm. Yeah. I think when I was at Trent, I joined a course on the history of punk rock, and I think
Cool.
what I discovered there is that there is a distinctive, I guess, pattern of there were women before the advent of punk rock. which are not too many, and they have a different style. But after punk rock, more women started to become rock musicians, and their style as well as their attitudes to music and to life, I suppose, are very much different. Do you happen to notice that? Like,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I do.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I don't have too much to add to that, but I do find that, yeah, you can have different attitudes towards it, no problem.
mhm. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just saying that in that they became like bolder and more audacious in their musical experimentation,
Yeah.
and they do see themselves as more equal to, I guess, their male counterparts, and sometimes more musically gifted too. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah, I guess I felt like when I started playing music, like I was extremely shy. Like I couldn't. I felt like like I'd go on stage and I would feel really like panicky. But then eventually getting used to it, and you drop that kind of imposter feeling. Then it's kind of like, okay, like I can do this. Like I am gonna. And then eventually you're just like on stage screaming, like, and you're like so confident and stuff. But yeah, I feel like people just need a chance to kind of find to drag it out of themselves. And the thing is that I do find a lot of people are just like, they'll start and they'll be like, and they'll give it up right away because they don't have that yet. But it takes time to develop that because you have to shed all that like really bad self talk to, you know, come out of your own shell. So I will say that that was kind of a whole thing. So maybe, the more that you shed, the more that you can unveil that really, really good, solid, like where confidence and adrenaline and all that is like, so intertwined. And then like you find your best self within it. And especially for women, like that's really important, like to kind of like um to feel, because I feel like instead we feel like we're just gonna get like kind of ridiculed,
Mhm,
which does happen, or talked down to, or made to feel like we don't belong or fit in, or and I feel like that's not even just women, that's like anyone that's not fitting some sort of, I don't know, whatever people think, um that isn't like a white male. um so it's like, I don't know, it's really tough. It's a really tough battle for people that just like, they have this like really good gift and they feel like they can't do it. Like I hate that for people so much. Anyway, I'm really passionate about it. I feel like I've been yelling about this since I started playing music. All of a sudden I've taken on this role as like this like person who's very vocal about feeling left out of a scene, or left out of a, having a muted voice or something like that. Like I don't know. I just like, I
mhm.
guess I just kind of like felt like I was like, I had that when I was living in Sudbury when I was a kid, and then leaving and like doing something like that made me feel like, you know what, screw that. Like I'm not going to be this shy person anymore about it.
Mhm. Yeah, I understand. And I think current day pop music, and I think pop music throughout all the ages have always emphasized looks when it comes to like women artists, as opposed to
Yeah, uh,
men.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting how a lot of the times when you're like thinking about a musician and what they're looking like or what they're wearing, 100% of the time it's usually a woman. Like, people are always like, oh, who they've dated, who are they currently dated, what are they wearing, blah blah blah. Um, and if there's any ridicule involved, it's usually a woman. Like it's never usually like this guy who, very rarely. Um, I mean, I don't know. I think it's just like, what is that? Like, what is that? I don't
Mhm.
know. Um, I guess just like years of sexism and stuff like that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Um,
Yeah.
so tell me about who are some of your favorite women musicians who've inspired you?
Oh gosh, yeah. Adrienne Lenker for sure, the big one. She's like this artist in the band Big Thief.
Mm,
She just kind of does what she wants and plays incredible folk music, and it's amazing. Gillian Welch, same thing. Um, I've got a lot. Uh, Elizabeth Powell from Land of Talk, huge one. She actually like was another, like, other than Radiohead, was like another reason why I make music. Oh, my laptop's at 1%. So hopefully this doesn't cut off. But um yeah, just a lot, especially Liz, especially we got to tour with her um in 2016 after we put out our first record, and um it was everything to me. Like it was like literally like a full circle moment where I got to actually meet her, tour with her. Um it was an extremely emotional time because it was like meeting one of your idols, and just like, yeah, it was like everything.
Let's see. I'd say the recently passed away Tina Turner is also a great
Oh
inspiration
yeah,
of
yeah.
mine.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. She's fantastic. My God, I wish I could wish singing like that is just how do you sing like that? I don't know. Oh God, just born with it.
Yeah. So I believe No Snow Kindness, your last record, was released in 2021, which is during COVID time. So how did you manage to survive COVID while in Toronto?
Um, so how do we play like with it going on, with COVID going on, sort of thing? It was challenging. Like, yeah,
Yeah, so we can
we
continue.
had a so we had a release show in Toronto, and it was like half capacity, which sucked. Um, it was still so fun to be able to play the shows, and like we even brought out like a couple of different players on stage, like Aaron Goldstein, he played pedal steel. We had someone playing violin. Like it was really cool. But again, like not there was a vibe, right? Because it was just when things kind of opened up again. Like it was really challenging, and it felt really good to be playing music, but also it felt like this isn't the full sort of like effect, I guess. But anyway, and then I think after that we got locked down again. So like, and then we were locked down all winter until like April. So that was really crappy. So anyway, when we first like came back, I think it was in 2022 when things were finally like you're able to, play music again. And this is when things felt a little bit more permanent. Like it was like you're playing shows again, and I don't think we're going to be locked down anymore, sort of thing. So we started playing. We had a tour with Pup, the band Pup, from Toronto as well. So we did some shows with them, which was really nice, and those felt like normal. They were full capacity, and that band is incredible. They're like the most. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the band Pup, but if you aren't, you should check them out. They're just like oh my God, like they are the most like energetic live musicians you'll ever like. It's the most like interesting live concert you'll ever get to see. Like they're just they put on such a show. And so their fans are also like extremely wonderful people. Like they're such well-behaved fans. It's amazing. Especially for the type of music that it is, because it's like pretty like loud, like, music, and with a lot going on. So and everyone's just like they have fans that are like range from like, really young ages to like, really old ages. So it's like they just have like the whole demographic anyway. And so their crowds get really big. Like they draw a lot of people. So that felt a little bit more like, okay, yeah, like we're playing live music again. Like this is happening again. This feels more normal, which was awesome. So we had the tour with them until the summertime. Off and on. I think two shows got canceled because of something that had to do with probably COVID. I'm not sure what. Can't remember now, but which unfortunately just kind of happens. But then they got rescheduled and we did them, and so we ended that tour in, I think it was like in June, and then the summertime we did a couple festivals, and then by the end of the summer I got pregnant, and then COVID's been like completely, no one really talks too much about that in the live music sector anymore. So um but we haven't really played since. I played a solo live show for a festival in my hometown, but other than that, I haven't played since August of last year, which I'm fine with. It's nice to take a little bit of a break, and like being pregnant and having the baby now, it's like challenging. So we're taking a bit of a break, but we're working on the new record. So that's how we're kind of seeing it, is like we're still being productive and working on some new stuff. But in terms of like stressing about a live show right now. Like we're just like, I don't even want to have to deal with that. It's a lot. We've had some lineup changes. Like one of our members is no longer with us, so we'd have to like completely train a whole new member, which is a whole thing. So that's time consuming, like to learn a whole bunch of new parts. That we would have to start working on and stuff like that, which we will. But right now it's just really hard with a newborn baby, so we're just taking it step by step. But yeah, back to COVID, like it feels like things are kind of better now. Like I'm not really sure, but you still want to be safe and you still don't want to, get other people sick. So if you are sick and things like that, like just, maybe don't go out and, test yourself still. Like it's not like it just went away, right? It's like it's still out there. It's just, more normalized, I guess now, and more like people have vaccinations and people are, hopefully doing due diligence about it. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, what's the key difference between the music scenes in Toronto and Sudbury, respectively?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just say size. Like they're just different sizes. The music scene in Toronto, like, is just it's a lot more people. So it offers a lot more bands, it offers a lot more like people attending the shows, things like that. So it's easier to kind of like make fans quicker. And also to make like-minded friends and stuff like that that are in like similar bands. But Sudbury still has that too. It's just that there's like, more, like, there's fewer of them because it's a smaller population. But the scene here is very tight knit because of that. Everybody kind of knows each other. A lot of musicians will play in each other's bands. Like you'll have one drummer in all of the bands here, sort of thing, almost like,
Well,
because maybe he plays that certain style of music or something like that, or maybe she plays that certain type of guitar that people want. Like it depends on that. But yeah, it's a lot of the same sort of people kind of coming through the revolving door. Whereas in Toronto, like you can get different people and new bands are starting up and um going through the trenches of playing live music and stuff like that. And then some of those bands are also getting, when they get larger, they stop playing Toronto a lot and they leave town and they tour. So then it opens up way for new smaller local bands. And that does happen here too. Just again, like it depends on the population, but the scene here is very similar in the way that we have the same type of music interest. So a lot of that alternative music. There's an alternative music scene here, which kind of is very similar to Toronto. And a lot of the bands here will go and they'll play shows in Toronto. And a lot of um, there's a lot of crossover and stuff like that, and which is really nice to see. Especially like because I moved back, I have connections there. So if a band is looking to maybe play a show there, I can potentially help them depending on timing and if a venue is available and if there's an agent that can get involved. Like so it's kind of nice. Like there's some cool crossover and stuff like that. So yeah, like a thriving music scene in a town is a good. It's good. Like it's a good sign that there's like musical life,
mhm.
and that's what you want, right? Because it sucks if you live somewhere and there isn't really much going on and there's nowhere to really go see live music. So I'm really grateful that Sudbury does have that really great musical infrastructure. So
Okay. So, one final question, one
yeah.
that I ask all musicians who've joined the show thus far. What does music mean to you?
Oh gosh. Uh, Probably my whole existence. No, I'm kidding, but like kind of. Like I was saying, like my whole existence was revolving around me being a musician for the longest part until I decided to like have a family. So it means a great deal. I feel like I can't not do it, sort of thing. Like it's like and then my husband could probably say the same thing. Like we literally cannot stop doing music. Like I don't care if like two people hear it. I don't care if a million people hear it. Like we're musicians. Like this is what we do. We will, we try to have new music post haste. It's hard. Yeah, you got to write and you got to like, put some life on hold and here and there. And we did. We put a lot of our life on hold for it, which again, I was happy to be able to do because I loved it so much. Um, but so what I'm trying to say is it means, every single thing to us. and we wouldn't be the people who we are, I guess, without it. And I wouldn't have, like, it's crazy. Like it bleeds into my job, it bleeds into like my hobbies, it bleeds into everything. Like I literally do music for a living. So like whether it's in my job or if whether it's in like, you know, like we're touring and we're doing things, like it's everything.
Mhm.
And yeah, if you feel the same way about it, if it's everything to you, and maybe you're just like, this is like to a message to people out there. Like if this is like something that you feel extremely passionate about and you can't stop thinking about it, and you maybe you don't play music yet and you always have wanted to do it. Like just try. Like, you know, you can get like a really crappy um like interface that you can record on, or like you can get like really cheap gear that you could be really surprised how good it could sound. um that's really easy to use. Like you could use GarageBand, you know, you can do anything like that, like, and learn how to use it very easily. If it's important enough to you, do it. Like just do it.
Awesome. Yeah, on that wonderful note, thank you
Yeah.
very much, Melanie St. Pierre of Casper's Calls, for joining this program.
Thanks so much for having me. This was really cool.
Mhm. Yeah, I wish you all the best with your music as well as your maternal life. And do tell Neil that I wish him a belated Happy Father's Day.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I will do that. He's babysitting right now while I do this. So. Awesome. It was really nice to meet you as well.
Likewise.